I will be doing my presentation on ancient women. Along the Mediterranean, there are similarities in the treatment of women, and there are some differences, even when the cultures are in close ideology and proximity. The three societies of the Athenians, Spartans, and Romans all had the strict ideology that family was a very important part of society. The approach that each culture took towards the treatment of the women in their lives also depended on the social class of the family. All of these cultures were in agreement that the main focus of the women in their families was to provide children and care for the entire family. In Athens, the woman's main function was to have children and take care of the home. The expectation was to provide new citizens, especially males, to carry on the family lineage. During a dialogue of an estate management that relates instructions of an Athenian man to his new wife, your duty will be to remain indoors and send out those servants whose work is outside and superintend those who work indoors. The females played a role as caretaker to the family. They had little influence and took almost no part in decision making of any other affairs. The adult female citizen could participate in religious cults and festivals but were otherwise excluded from public life. The ideal is up for debate, though, because there are some differences between the social classes, and there are considerable bodies of evidence that indicates that Athenian women participated in a wide range of activities which regularly took place outside the home. These include working in the fields and selling items at the marketplace. Aristotle in The Politics says that in a democracy, it is impossible to prevent women of the poor class from going out to work, and an Athenian law made it a delict to rebuke any citizen, male or female, from selling in the marketplace and to participate in any sacrifice or religious festivals. Thoughts soon changed on how women were perceived by the Athenians. By the 4th century, under the influence of their fathers and husbands, a few women rejected traditional roles and turned to the study of philosophy. The notion of marriage for the sake of children began to yield to an ideal of companionate union for mutual fulfillment. It was believed that women did influence society beyond just being a maternal figure. There were muses that inspired artists, and there were also goddesses that were worshipped. The city itself is named after the goddess Athena. In Sparta, family was also the focus of women. The women of Sparta had different roles in the family unit. The lives of Spartans were rigidly organized and tightly controlled. They were to keep everything running smoothly while the man was away at training. As a Spartan woman, you were also expected to exercise and remain fit in order to bear and raise healthy children. Like the men, Spartan women engaged in athletic exercise, and the role of the woman was very important since their husbands were in military barracks. This is where Spartan women differ from other women in Greece, because they had more freedom to move around and also to run the household. Another difference is that Spartan mothers were to give their sons to the state for training at the age of 7. A newborn child, if the elders decided that it was fit to be reared, was returned home to its mother until the age of 7. During the day, though, when a child was old enough, it was taken by its father to the dining clubs to sit on the floor, learn good manners, and more about the Spartan spirit, as well as maybe perhaps the dreadful Spartan soup. This was something that the Spartan women were to uphold. They had a strict value that their husbands and sons were putting their lives on the lines for Sparta, and that it was their duty to be just as brave. In ancient Rome, the structure of the family was still central and dominated by the male figurehead. This was known as a paterfamilias. The household also included the wife, the sons, along with their wives and children, unmarried daughters, and slaves. Similar to the Athenians, the Roman women were made to use male guardians. The male figurehead still had the ultimate power in the family. The father passed down what was called the legal control. This meant that the power over the daughter was given to the husband. But by the mid-1st century BCE, the dominant practice had been changed to without legal control, which meant that the married daughters officially remained within their father's legal power. This made way for forceful women to become independent since their fathers eventually died and left the daughter independent of the husband. Roman women fortunes were based on family inheritance, and they were supplemented by legalities that increased their prestige. As for financial independence, this was essential to power and autonomy. In theory, most women were not financially independent, since they were still under the supervision of their father, their husband, or a tutor. Even emancipated women were supposed to have a guardian. And if they engaged in any important financial transactions that could diminish their property, this was not allowed. By the 2nd century, though, the practice seems to have been restricting more than the legal norms. Nevertheless, for a woman to be able to display complete freedom from any financial action was quite unusual and usually a mark of honor. Among upper class women in Rome during the empire, this freedom was reserved for the Vestal virgins and for women who, according to Augustan legislation, had earned the right by having at least 3 children. After the 2nd century, there were significant changes happening in the Roman family. The paterfamilias no longer had absolute authority over his children. He could no longer sell his children into slavery or have them put to death. In the Roman family, class also directly affected women. In upper class households, the girls were educated by either a private tutor or being put into a primary school. The girls were educated usually until they were ready for secondary school. This was due to the fact that the girls were then prepared to be married to a man of their father's choosing. The legal age for marriage was 12, but it was more common for a young girl to be married off at 14. The women were, of course, expected to bear healthy children. At this time, doctors were in agreement that childbirth at such a young age was harmful to the girl. Since childbirth was a danger to women, they had short life expectancies. All these women did not have the same rights and privileges as men did. Their role was first as a mother and a role model to their children. This role shapes the way the children view themselves as future citizens and their contribution to their society. Also, depending on the personality and wealth of the women, they could influence their husband in many decision-making aspects. You can see how many women influence society and the culture by the goddesses that they worshipped, such as Athena and Hera. I also believe that the women were oppressed in many different ways as well. They saw women only as a mother with no rights or intelligence to make decisions, which underestimates the power of the woman. As times changed, the role of women became more significant. There was no longer just one role, but many. How women are perceived is something that will be an ongoing evolution in society and culture. Thank you.